Over the years, data has continued to exponentially evolve. Let's imagine it's the year 2030. By then, we'll have about 572 zettabytes of data. For a sample size, in 2022, we created 94 zettabytes. If you haven't heard of the term zettabytes, I don't blame you. It's still a relatively new term for a measurement of digital storage, and it basically equates to 1 billion terabytes. With 1 zettabyte, you'd be able to download about 500 billion movies, given that the average movie in 720p is about 2 gigabytes. Needless to say, that is a lot of data and screen time. And beyond just the amount of data we're exponentially generating, the use cases around how we utilize this data are also evolving at just as rapid of a pace. As sensitive information gets digitalized, value becoming tokenized, more and more operations being done virtually, this in return also means we're much more vulnerable to the potential threats of what a cyber attack could do. Meaning the ramifications of cybersecurity are all that much more important as technology continues to evolve. Constellation Network is one of the few that see this arising issue as a potential for innovation to expand, innovate, and secure this new age of data. I'm Tokenicer, and I'm here to bring you guys in-depth research and analysis from the digital asset space, along with covering the progressive tokenization of the world. Be sure to check out Tokenicer.network for all my other content platforms directly in one spot. From my Twitter threads, Spotify podcasts, Medium articles, interviews, and much more. As always, that'll be right down in the description below. Now, before we continue any further, I've also just got to remind you guys real quick that nothing you ever get from me will ever be any form of financial or investment advice, as I'm not a financial advisor. But with that said, let's dive right down the rabbit hole. Data is an interesting concept. In theory, data could be anything digital. An image, a movie, online games, or some more serious things like your financial data or even your own credentials that identify you as you. And with blockchain technology, we've only seen this continue to evolve, with data now being permanently recorded and immutable after it's been validated in a distributed network as being truthful. But at the end of the day, even after the data has been validated, there's still so much more regarding what we could potentially do with that data beyond having it sit there to look back at because it's immutable. Constellation clearly recognizes this, and for this reason, they've built their network to not just be centered around data as a whole, but they're building infrastructure to build upon this vision of what a world ran on data could really look like. You guys ever see those movies where it takes place in a super futuristic society and pretty much everything's automated? From the cars, doors, roads, and just about everything else we interact with on a day-to-day basis is in some way or form connected like an IoT product. Well, this is just one part of the vision that Constellation has for what the Hypergraph could do. We've previously discussed on some of what the Hypergraph can bring regarding its cybersecurity, scalability, programming logic, and its data-centric framework. But it's been quite a bit since then, and some things have obviously changed throughout their continued development. From progressions to new projects and toolkits launching on their Hypergraph, the team's been building over the course of this bear market non-stop. While there were some delays regarding certain releases, the Constellation team had just released their long-awaited software development kit for builders to come and openly build on their network. But on top of that, this new update came with some additional news and upgrades. For starters, the term state channel has been scrapped. As we know, this was a term to describe the subnetworks of projects building on the Hypergraph. It was basically a much more robust form of smart contracts, where smart contracts execute by an if this, then that happens basis. State channels can provide much further customization and business logic to best fit a certain enterprise needs for their specific operations. But don't worry, because the concept is still here. It's just been retitled to Metagraphs due to how the term state channel has been used to describe different layer 2 solutions, causing some confusion around all that. This all directly ties into their software development kit, for where developers can now easily begin building and minting Metagraph and Metagraph tokens through a currency framework on the Hypergraph. There's some other updates regarding their overall ecosystem and operations, but we'll get into that briefly right after we look at some of the projects that will be leveraging this toolkit and currency framework. Some of the projects we'll have already discussed in a previous breakdown, so let's just briefly go over these ones before looking further in depth into some of the other projects. First, there's Lattice, which has since been rebranded to Lattice Gateway. The overall concept of this is still relatively similar, with being a hub for all things on the Hypergraph, as there's operations like node management, launch pads, and a dashboard for their door traffic miners. The soft nodes are still there and as straightforward and easy to set up as before. Some of the main changes they've made since then include the staking of VELTX, which is pretty much the incentivization and governance token for their ecosystem, where if you hold VLTX, you'll get additional rewards from their launchpad distributions in their fee sharing model. Alchemy is another one we previously discussed, which is focused on disrupting the advertising industry through a decentralized advertising exchange to create a more even, efficient, and overall, much less of the garbage we see with modern advertising and irrelevant ads today, which are constantly just being shoved in our faces. In this decentralized advertising exchange environment, it matches advertisers with platform publishers. Now, aside from the fragmented issues of having randomized ads due to the advertising industry's practice of mass advertising, it's also an extremely inefficient industry in terms of marginal cost. This is, of course, due to middlemen throughout the process. In fact, it's reported that 49% of the money spent on an ad goes to the middleman rather than the publisher. Perhaps the most notable thing that's happened with Alchemy lately is landing a partnership with Vice for utilizing their ad exchange for ad bidding. And if you haven't heard of Vice, well, in 2021, Vice Media was given the title of the world's largest independent youth media company. So yeah, that's obviously pretty huge. Additionally, building a marketing and advertising focused project like Alchemy on Hypergraph couldn't have been a better choice. When we look at the advertising and marketing industry over the past few years, what's one tool they've been using as their strongest asset to have their marketing campaigns work as effectively and accurately as possible? Data, right? Well, with the Hypergraph utilizing everything as data in its rawest form under the Layer 0 standard, this seems to be a pretty sweet match. We also discussed GeoJam, which is in short a social application that's working to integrate the aspects of decentralization, community, and Web3 together. And again, social media is another one of those industries that can heavily utilize and leverage the aspects of data. Though an obvious issue with the social media industry is that it's largely monopolized. From the continued domination of Facebook transitioning to Meta, the exponential rise in TikTok, and of course now Elon Musk buying Twitter, needless to say, the journey to build a viral social media platform is a tough uphill battle. And that's why GeoJam has decided to come into this industry with some innovations of their own. It connects content creators to their fan bases closer than ever before. There will also be regular prompts and rewards to incentivize users to bring their own creativity to the application, and other mini games such as competitions and virtual or physical events that give power back to the community. They're backed by some pretty big industry names such as Mariah Carey, Tyga, Murda Beats, Nigel Houston, and a few others. And on top of this, they were actually ranked as one of Fast Company's most innovative music companies in 2022. So things seem to be going pretty well in terms of progression with GeoJam too. FanToken is another one that we mentioned, which actually shares a lot of similarities to GeoJam in regards to being an application that's tying the fanbase community and creators much closer. Though FanToken is much more focused on entertainment and events as a whole, with benefits added for fans, entertainers, and venues, where fans will be able to take back some of the power in having a say in content being produced by some of their favorite content creators, while getting exclusive deals and rewards based on their contributions to the community, which are offered through the content creators as a way to give back to some of their most loyal fans. Additionally, these venues and creators can get additional insights from the data showing things like engagement, reach, venue revenues, expenses, and overall the performance of these specific events. We also discussed the Void, which is an NFT-focused protocol leveraging the parameters of the Hypergraph for additional programming logic. Essentially, think microprocessing applications as NFTs. Initially, it may seem like this is just another aged, saturated idea of a NFT marketplace, but by building on the hypergraph, it allows for so much more flexibility in terms of what these NFTs can do. The interoperability between data types, customizable logic, and the ability to scale to execute small micro procedures, these are all innovations within the NFT and verifiable credential industry to further build upon the concepts of not just tokenized assets, but businesses that are essentially tokenized on-chain. And we also discussed Genico, which what they're trying to do is bring sovereign healthcare data utility and ownership to a mass reality. Healthcare data is the most valuable data, and the big corporations know it. Our own healthcare data is all kept by large institutions that sell it to big pharma to get better insights for personalized products. In fact, healthcare data is such a large part of overall data generation on a daily basis that 1/3 of all the world's data every day is healthcare related. That's about 400 exabytes of data, or 3,355,440,000 terabytes of data. And so Genico also sort of works as this middle ground platform between the people, which would be the ones supplying that data, being regular everyday people like us. And then of course, data buyers would be like big pharma corporations who need to analyze that data to create better personalized products. This is, again, another heavy data-centric subsector within healthcare that will really expand on the overall value added and development of products within healthcare. Now, as you may have noticed, all these projects on the hypergraph share one thing in common. All these projects are focused on the high volume frequency of data usage and generation. Of course, advertising will generate massive amounts of data due to the fact that there will always be demand for ads to be displayed. A social platform will also be generating large amounts of data 24/7. NFTs that also work as smaller scaled virtual businesses with customized programming logic into it. It's not only a new avenue for businesses to expand, but due to the automation would also fall under high frequency microprocesses of data. And then as we mentioned with healthcare data being responsible for 1/3 of all the data we generate on a daily basis, on top of that, all being utilized for new information of product development, that's a lot of data utilization. But there's also been various other projects that have begun building on the hypergraph since then. For example, Concord is another project listed in Constellation's ecosystem. Their main initiative for this project is privacy-focused data collection. So these operations can range from things like identity management, healthcare, financial services, government, e-commerce, and many others that require sensitive pieces of data from you. And as seen here, you can easily integrate Concord's solutions for data privacy on various common business applications, such as Adobe, Discord, DocuSign, Dropbox, Facebook, Figma, Google, Microsoft products, and many others. We can also see that Benjamin Diggles, the Chief Strategy Officer for Constellation, and the man behind all the federal contracts and military work that the Constellation has been doing, is also a working member within business development for Concord. And you may have realized that Concord seems much more broad of a project compared to the other ones we've been discussing, which have largely been revolved around one specific industry. Cybersecurity and data privacy are an essential piece of any industry going digital, especially with all the sensitive data that's going to be utilized. From banking credentials, healthcare, insurance, federal, retail commerce, identities, etc. They've also got 17 patents approved in 2021 revolved around user control of anonymized profiling data using public and private blockchains in a digital ad marketplace, which is also just a fancy way of saying to capture and use of user consent, including the ability to withdraw consent and automate data compliance through blockchain technology. On top of this, they filed for an additional 20 patents relating to how personal data can be protected and stored for privacy and ownership while enabling companies to utilize that data. As we were talking about Diggles just now, we know that Constellation is pretty well known for their work with the Department of Defense, getting their first SBIR contract all the way back in 2019, and since having developed more and more with them. But we can actually also see that Concord has their own collaboration with the Department of Defense through an SBIR contract of their own, in which they'll be working to modernize and upgrade the Air Force's current data privacy and collection processes. The goal seems to be to integrate repeatable efficiency, cost reduction, and alignment with the needs of the Department of Defense and the US Air Force. And again, the overall vision for Concord aligns perfectly with the goals of the Hypergraph. Though unlike the usual projects where the focus synergy is on the large amounts and frequency of data processes, Concord will leverage the cybersecurity and robust data validation from the Hypergraph to allow their solutions to scale and be validated in the best practices possible. Now, on the other end is Cyberlite. This project pretty much takes a full 180 spin from everything we were discussing about Concord. Their focus is towards the gaming sector, but unlike most projects in this space that usually try to enter the gaming space by building play-to-earn models in their games to try and attract gamers through incentivization, Cyberlite leverages the gaming frameworks that already exist today, as they've built an anti-cheating engine that leverages machine learning, so it just gets stronger and smarter over time. They've integrated things such as biometric data for a Know Your Player procedure as an online sovereign identity. And while their main focus isn't on the whole concepts of play to earn, they do have an earning model to incentivize users to utilize the platform, in which you can earn rewards by playing your favorite games to help with the engine's machine learning process to better understand the movements and habits of gamers. Just for an example, in many real-time games, players tend to move in a predictable but non-linear fashion. It's a pretty straightforward path, but for the most part, it's not directly in one straight direction. Whereas usually cheat programs and scripts will have a character walk perfectly linear to where its movements are almost too perfect for it to be a regular gamer. Most players tend to move in a pretty similar trajectory, and so when there's a large change in that, the AI engine is easily able to detect changes in behavior, frequency, reaction time, and everything else that goes into what makes a gamer. Now, the thing about Cyberlite to me that makes them so interesting is more than just that they've found an interesting path to build within the gaming sector. But if you really think about this solution fundamentally, it's a software that's able to detect abnormal movements and behavior. When you break it down to layman's terms outside of gaming context, that's what it really is. So with that knowledge, we can look into other procedures that could also use something like this. And honestly, the list seems pretty endless, so I'm just going to drop a couple examples here for you guys to visualize. With self-driving cars becoming more and more of a reality, the detecting engine of Cyberlite could be a potential addition to this in regards to understanding the normal trajectory and movements of these cars. While the detecting part could come in handy for faulty data inputs and improvements within developing the best practices in terms of data inputs and outputs for these automotives. As we were just talking about military-grade security, there's also a potential for collaboration here. Imagine if the system was installed into a defense base, and with that you can now track any abnormal activities such as unidentified objects flying near the nation. Kinda like that balloon a while back, eh? And then the last example I'll give is regarding the financial industry. Probably where the most cyber crimes or other catastrophic things happen, right? These again could all be detected prior to them happening due to the engine being able to detect movements and procedures outside of the norm. Now there's a ton of other solutions and possibilities for how Cyberlite's engine could be utilized in other industries, with some of these being supply chain, IoT, analysis, social media, and many others. But we'll save that breakdown for another video. Now we'll mention one more project on the Hypergraph before we move on to an update of more recent news and developments. And this last project we'll be highlighting isn't so much of a protocol like the others per se, but one of the additional data utilities on the Hypergraph nonetheless. This is of course the door traffic miner, or the DTM for short. This is a thermal sensing people counting device, and essentially its focus is on gathering foot traffic data in a variety of different locations. While this did launch a while back, I personally do think this is one of the most creative ideas on the Hypergraph that continues to see relevance in its use cases today. On the community side, basically everyone can buy one of these and stick it up to a door frame anywhere they want, whether that be a mall, restaurant, school, office, gym, library, or even their own home. And then of course they'd be rewarded for the data they provide. On the other end, this data may seem kind of silly, but it can actually provide a lot of use cases for things like understanding busy shopping hours, high demand areas within a specific location, which can all tie into real business insights. For example, if you install it at a large retail plaza, these businesses can understand the amount of foot traffic there and whether there's the demand for an additional venue or specific store. Academias can use this data to get better insights on when their facility hours are most busy, and the kind of pattern the students and teachers would go through on a day-to-day basis for janitors to see when the best time for them to start cleaning up would be. Those are just two really random examples I'd thought up. There's countless more, and the best thing about this is, in my opinion, that this is essentially a real-life tangible node on the hypergraph. Because for so long, the argument to FUD crypto has been, well, if I can't touch it, then it doesn't exist. Well, now there's a product you can physically touch that provides additional value as data into the hypergraph that you get rewarded for bringing in. Additionally, they've got some pretty solid customers and partners such as Shopify and Square for point of sales around conversion rates and market trends. And then the customer side, they've also listed Samsung and BMW. Of course, two very large established companies in their own rights. But that's about all we'll highlight regarding the projects on the hypergraph. There's a few more we didn't quite look into, such as Finovant, which is focused on biometric identity, Node Army, which is focused on further distributing and decentralizing the validator nodes on the hypergraph, Greenheart CBD, which we also previously discussed, what is focused around the growth of CBD products within the agriculture industry to add an additional stream of income and revenue to farmers around the world, and a few others, as some of these are still further developing some additional solutions into their ecosystem. So we'll be sure to give these a proper review when the time is right. For now, let's move on to some of the news and updates regarding the overall operations of the hypergraph. Constellation has added 2 partners into their ecosystem, with these being Foursquare and Snowflake, both of which are cloud-focused technology platforms. With Foursquare, they're working to provide more clear insights on restaurant and retail business traffic trends, which, as you guessed, ties perfectly into the door traffic miner operations. The data collected from these DTMs will then be integrated with the Foursquare Visits platform, which will help them better understand the macroeconomic long-term trends of consumer behavior to build business products and solutions around these trends. With Snowflake, this partnership is actually somewhat similar in the sense that the DTM will once again be the centerpiece of this collaboration. Snowflake offers cloud-based data storage and analytics as a service for a variety of different industries. And while essentially this partnership is going to have the data from these door traffic miners be added into Snowflake's data marketplace for businesses looking to enhance their data insights through foot traffic. So as we can see, the door traffic miner has become quite a focal point in the hypergraph ecosystem, which isn't something you often see in most blockchain networks, as it's usually a specific application or protocol that seems to take the spotlight. And seeing these large established data companies begin leveraging the data on the hypergraph for real business solutions is a great thing to see for their progression. Now, for my favorite part of the Constellation ecosystem, we're of course going to be talking about their regulated connections to the Department of Defense, as this to me shows the strongest form of backing and real collaboration of DLT solutions. We of course know and have discussed their SBIR contracts to help with data security and joint all-domain command control, right? They had earned a Phase 1 contract in 2019 with a direct grant to Phase 2 in 2021, which is something that almost never happens. So in Phase 2, some of the things they accomplished included secure smart contract deployment with the Civil Reserve Air Fleet for automated data deployment in a multi-party scheme, hosting security of command and control data in storage, simply meaning that the data is secured and at rest as it's no longer in transit, and then blockchain security of command control data communications, pretty much describing the securing of the data that's being moved in transit from middleman attackers as it's on its move from destination A to destination B. And with them even saying that one of the solutions that they've been working on, titled IRON SPIDR, is the lead blockchain program at the federal level in terms of connecting technologies and having those data flows work together securely. And because of these milestones, Constellation Network is now actually seen as a mission-critical solution with the Air Force Research Laboratory, saying that IRON SPIDR is the lead blockchain program at the federal level in terms of connecting technologies and having these data flows all work together securely and simultaneously. With support from various data types thanks to metagraphs and the network only needing 3 nodes to get started, this provides a very simple yet effective solution for mission-critical initiatives. The SPIDR in IRON SPIDR stands for Security Peer-to-Peer Immutable Data Resilience. And while the IRON SPIDR has been in development, there's a couple other steps in the roadmap that they're looking to accomplish to have this properly be utilized at scale in a compliant manner. Because when you're operating at the federal defense level, compliance is essential, right? And so is having everything work as it's supposed to be, because one wrong move and there could be some very serious consequences. There will need to be a data exchange within IRON SPIDR where the focus will be on the Civil Reserve air fleets to focus on secure commercial communication, in which Constellation will have access to the systems from the Civil Reserve air fleets to help build interoperability within the data architectures and systems. They'll also be looking to secure smart contracts and build towards microservices further, where these small high-frequency data processes, such as scanning for threat vectors, could be classified under the microservices part, and the frameworks for creating universally deployable smart contracts. All while doing this on the Hypergraph, of course, where one of the other points of focus will also be to have data to and from the Hypergraph and other chains that will be approved under this framework. That's all pretty exciting stuff if you ask me. We previously talked about how much data the Department of Defense generates, and with all this eventually being on the Hypergraph, that's quite a lot to take in. I'd say there's some exciting development ahead. And then on the organization side, they'll be working within the Defense Information System Agency and National Institute of Standards and Technology for approval on vetting the Hypergraph to officialize them as a technology standard in the federal government space. Since when you're working to deploy what they call DevOpsSec, short for Development Security Operations, you have to be approved by these agencies, especially when it's mission-critical data. So Constellation says their main federal themes for 2023 will be revolved around having data exchanges being done on-chain through the Hypergraph, interoperability of different chains and technologies through Hypergraph, regulatory approval from the Defense Information System Agency and National Institute of Standards and Technology, space and satellite security through their work with Space ISAC, deepening the work with their strategic and federal partnerships, and then expanding on new use cases of the Hypergraph through new contracts. Now, a couple other interesting things they're working on that aren't quite as much related to the federal side, if at all, are 1. They're trying to put physical access cards or clearance cards on DLT, with a digital twin of it on-chain as an NFT within a specific wallet where owners can sign in there for their digital card access. And on the other end, they're working to secure audio and visual data for examples like streaming or communication services in terms of validation. If you ask me, this couldn't have come at a better time. With the continued rapid rise in AI with things like GPT-4 and all those AI-generated videos of Trump getting arrested before he actually got arrested, along with those videos where they can copy someone's voice and lip movements perfectly, the need for this is now, because I'm sure most of you guys have probably realized what this technology can do when it gets in the wrong hands. So security and proof of authenticity is really needed with the way AI is going to continue moving. While a lot of the original ideas that made state channels so great, such as businesses running on them with the ability to mint tokens and build customizable programming logic beyond what smart contracts could do, as we mentioned the switch from state channels to metagraphs earlier, they're expanding beyond that with Constellation's very own Metagraph and Metagraph token standard, which is also the new name for Layer 0 tokens, and the currency framework for state channels to begin minting their own tokens, and building out applications on the Hypergraph which smart contracts couldn't scale up towards. One big change that they've come out publicly saying is that they'll be adding consistent upgrades for the network, which they've decided to call each of these individual upgrades as eras. And within this, the tokenomics are also going to have brief changes and adjustments with each era, which may or may not be controversial, but personally I think that's a really cool function and one that makes sense for a utility token. Because if the token is going to be utilized on a high microprocessing protocol, there will obviously be changes throughout the process in terms of the token functions. So changing them to see what is best fit for the overall network seems to just make sense. Now the software development kit is titled Euclid. This really opens doors for the possibilities and avenues of adoption for the hypergraph. Because with this, it's basically showing that Constellation has laid the groundwork and the foundation all there. Now it's up to the community, the world of enterprises, and entrepreneurs to begin building data-focused applications that provide a solution. They had also released a new light paper to go over some of the changes and updates within the hypergraph economy, where there were talks focused on metagraphs in regards to their functions, but one very interesting part was where they highlight, while we know that the hypergraph will be feeless to use, metagraphs will have some fees to pay for the data being validated. Which does make sense, right? To validate the data you'll be using for your specific business purposes, there'll be a network fee for taking up that bandwidth. And of course, these Metagraph snapshot fees are paid for in DAG. These fees are irrecoverable, meaning that if these fees exceed what's being distributed to validator nodes, the DAG token can potentially become deflationary. So overall, a lot of exciting stuff going on with the Constellation ecosystem, right? They're working on the standard of IRON SPIDR with a federal branch, Metagraph tokens for the digital asset space, but they've also begun adopting this other open standard, which is for simplifying blockchain integrations with exchanges and other third-party software and services. But they've also begun adopting this other open standard titled Rosetta, which is simplifying blockchain integrations with exchanges and other third-party softwares and services. And there's a few other popular public blockchain projects in this space that are also adopting Rosetta. These are like Celo, Mina, Filecoin, Oasis, Near, Cadena, and a few others. Though overall, with the focus of this update being revolved around their software development kit Euclid in their first era titled Hercules, things seem to be going pretty well over at Constellation in just about every part of their operations. From federal operations, partnerships, network development. So hopefully the team at Constellation keeps this up and we see success from both sides in terms of development with the overall network, but also adoption of projects that begin building on the hypergraph. As mentioned before, they've laid the groundwork now for building out a truly top industry grade blockchain network for businesses to begin deploying their operations and leveraging the data capabilities of the hypergraph. With Euclid having all the things required to get set up, from building up a metagraph, minting metagraph tokens, and deploying validator nodes onto the hypergraph, in addition to a full dashboard displaying metrics of the underlying metagraph token, it'll be exciting over the course of this next little bit to see how the overall progression with Constellation and the hypergraph as a whole will look like. It'll be exciting to see what kind of projects are built on the hypergraph within this Metagraph token standard and leveraging its scale to top-grade data validation and security. Maybe we'll see something within the financial industry like payments data or on-chain market tracing with tokenized assets. Or maybe it'll be a data marketplace for analysis on all the different types of data coming onto the hypergraph. For example, advertising, foot traffic, healthcare, NFTs, etc. That's potentially valuable data in the right hands, and well, all that data is already there given the applications built on the hypergraph already. But who knows though? I'm looking forward to seeing the continued development from Constellation within every vertical of their operations. It's rare to see a blockchain project with a vision as robust as disrupting all the data and information in terms of how we move, secure, validate, and use it. The age of data is now, and we have the early opportunity to take advantage of this monumental shift that's already happening. So how will you be looking to leverage the innovative capabilities of the hypergraph? Alright, so that's about what we've got for our update on the Constellation ecosystem. As you guys can see, a lot of really exciting things have been going on, and they continue to adjust and adapt the hypergraph to be in the best position to capture that vision. If you enjoyed what you got out of this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe, along with turning that ringer on so you don't miss a thing. We consistently go over deep research within the DLT space, looking into a variety of regulated networks and initiatives. And while you're at it, be sure to check out Tokenicer.network for all my other content platforms in one spot. For my Twitter threads, Spotify podcasts, Medium articles, interviews, and so much more. And as always, they'll be right down in the description below. But that's about all I've got for you guys today. As always, be sure to keep learning and stay safe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.